Okay, hi guys. It is your host for the She Needs Grit podcast, Samantha Varner, and I am here today with a guest. As you guys know, I've started doing some interview podcasts to bring some different voices and different messaging onto the podcast. And I think there's so much value in getting information from all sorts of different sources about all sorts of different pieces of growing a business. So today, I'm so excited to have Dana Spano on. She networks with me in one of the group coaching programs I'm with. And I love her messaging and I love her business. And so I was really excited when she wanted to hop on to this podcast. So, Dana, welcome.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here, genuinely.
Yes, I am thrilled to have you here. So, I'm going to ask you to do your own introduction because I feel like you always do a heck of a better job than I'm going to do. So tell us a little bit about you, about your business, and then we'll chat.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody. I'm Dana Spano, and I run a brand identity coaching, strategy, and design company based in Raleigh, North Carolina. And how I kind of fell into entrepreneurship on accident. At the time, I was married to an entrepreneur. He was kind of a serial entrepreneur. He, had his hands in a lot of different businesses, and one of them was a digital marketing business. And so, with my graphic design background, it was just such an easy like, hey, I have this project. Can you quickly, get me a design file? And I was like, sure. And so we just kind of started to spin up more and more business that way. And so funny enough, like it just fell into place. It's a
Hmm.
skill I didn't go to school for, believe it or not. Again, it's just this happy,
I believe it. I think there's so many entrepreneurs out there that we are doing things that we didn't necessarily get
right?
trained for.
Well,
I
and
think
it's
it's
just so
awesome that
funny
way.
because I honestly believe that, we have these skills, but then we have maybe another skill set that shapes so much the way we go about our business, right? So, for example, my background is in psychology, and that's what I went to school for. I didn't get a graduate degree, of course, but my undergrad, I think approaching design through that lens has been the absolute, how do you say it? Just the thing that really differentiates me in my business and my unique angle on design and how I can approach it. So um, that's it's funny. That's like the thing that I tell people most is it's like, okay, so you have these skills, right? And like you can meld them together. And
Hmm.
so, some people see those as so uh, just disparate, right? Like they don't see how those things can go together, but they
Hmm.
totally can. So, quick side note. Um, right? So,
I love it.
at the point I went freelance, I had actually just moved across the country, and so plays into the
Hmm.
falling into it, right? Out of necessity, right? Didn't have a job when I moved here to North Carolina, and so it just kind of fed itself, right? As luckily my husband at the time, was pulling in projects, and I could just coast. So I was really grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. You had kind of steady
Exactly.
stream of business. That works. So, yeah. So, what do you find? I don't know. What do you think the clients are excited about the most when they determine you're looking at this in a different way, right? With that psychology background, you are coming at it differently than what the kind of the average person in your industry is. How much does that impact your clients? How much do they start to realize, like,
Yeah.
ooh, we're doing this
I honestly
differently?
think, it's something that I have to cover with them before we get into a project because that kind of, diving into a certain self awareness for a branding project isn't something people expect. And so they have to be willing, right? They have to be so willing to just be vulnerable
Hmm.
and let me, dig in there and know all the things about them so that we can turn and reflect that to the world. So it's something that it's not for the faint of heart, right? But if you can and you're
Hmm.
willing to dig in and go that deep, then it pays off so well.
Yeah, I think I've gone through branding a number of different times and with different outcomes in terms of my love of my branding. And I do think that in some circumstances that has been missing, right? My ability to really pull into my branding,
Mm,
who I really am. I think sometimes you get distracted with what's in the market, what's everybody else doing. Yeah, that looks pretty. And that's a part of it, right? You want to be finding your brand attractive, but there's also you want to have it reflect you in a really strong way. And I think the best way to do that is the psychology piece of it, really diving into like, well, what am I trying to put forth of myself into this company, right? And it's not always all of you, but it's a good portion of you, depending on how you want to brand and
exactly.
position yourself
Exactly.
for
And
sure.
what's fascinating to me is to look at kind of the norms that we have. You know, we live in the digital age, right? Where we're surrounded by amazing looking brands, right? And so we have, so many of
Hmm.
us have equated branding with aesthetic alone, right? And especially for people like coaches, service providers who are, at the forefront of their business, we have to look at it differently. Um, in contrast, these corporations and bigger businesses that kind of model that standard for us, they have teams of people, right, who have basically created something entirely new that didn't exist before, that they all agree to, right, for a brand. And the tighter they
Hmm.
can all kind of rally behind this one vision, the stronger their brand is. And the longer that that's in play, the stronger the brand is, right? For humans, it's a little bit different, right? Where, like, if I'm the only person behind my business and I create a brand that's kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Just idealized, right? If I just kind of have all of these,
Hmm.
like perfect aesthetic, like all these things that just, they're ideals, right? If that's all I show up as, and then I go to serve my client and it's not that way, there's a major disconnect, and guarantee there will be, because we're human, right? And there's just such more of a human element
Hmm.
to our service and to our brand, than a corporation does. Fact of the matter is, in the branding world, and I guess in the corporate branding world, they try to find ways to bring humanity into their business. Right? And
Yep.
the buzzword of the century is authenticity, right? Like, how do we bring more authenticity into our business? Because
Hmm.
not too long ago, corporations realized that, what, people aren't buying into ideals and aspirations as much as they are authenticity. And so there's this interesting thing that happens where corporations tend to, like, Frankenstein human traits into their brand that doesn't quite feel human.
Hmm.
And so, as an actual human leading your business, like, I think the absolute best thing we can do is get you showing up as authentically and honestly and transparently as possible. In my business, the tagline that I am kind of toying with, but it's my mission statement, is to prove that what is real is marketable. And so, right? Because
Ooh.
how often are
Yes.
we, turning to face our marketing and being like, okay, I got to show up differently than how I am. This isn't going to work. So I need to show
Hmm.
up as,
Yeah.
this ideal version of myself. And what I
Hmm.
want to help people realize is that deeply, how we are, who we are, is the best thing we can bring to our business. And it's the best bridge that we can build to connecting with just the right audience that we can actually bring value to and serve.
I think that's so good. I think it resonates in so many different areas of life, right? Like obviously branding is key and marketing and getting yourself visible and all of that piece is so critical. But I think even just as an overarching message, right? I think as a mom with kids that I'm trying to like have them realize in their middle kind of school and young teen years, that authenticity, that belief in the fact that who you are is awesome and it doesn't matter, you don't have to become or try to become something that you're not. I think it's that's a message to go far beyond just the branding of your company, but also just damn people, this
Exactly.
is just how we can be. We can be who we are, and who we are is amazing. Exactly as it is, right? You don't have to be more of this or less of that or whatever. Um yeah, I think that is a mission. I mean, that is a big big mission, but I love it because I do think that that makes a massive difference for people. And it means that we can just kind of, I don't know, step comfortably into who we are and then just be that person where you go
Exactly.
and that will work. You're not trying
Exactly.
to play a game all the time, right? Or try on a
It
costume, which,
does.
that gets hard after a while trying to
Definitely. And that's
stick
from
to
like a
that.
personal standpoint, right? You would
Yeah.
call that your personal brand. But from a
Mhm.
marketing perspective, like
Yeah.
imagine like having your personal one, but then also having one for your business and trying to keep all of that together is bonkers. Like it's insane. And so
Yeah.
what's interesting
Yeah.
about it is as I came up with this methodology, the kind of the saying that came to me, and I've heard this before, but the only way out is through, right? And so with that, it's so
Mhm.
fascinating that like with my approach to branding, it involves pretty intense self-awareness, right? And kind of stepping back,
Yep.
putting it on the wall, beautiful mind style, right? And just saying, okay, this
Mhm.
is objectively about me, right? How do I feel in my skin? Like how does that actually resonate? And using
Mhm.
different systems of personality and things like that, we can see what you agree with and what feels true, right? What's so fascinating about this is the
Yeah.
only way out is through, is that by incorporating so much of who we are into our brand, we can then get out of our own way, which is fascinating to me, right? Where some people would say, it's
Mhm.
it's so selfish to like
Yeah.
build a brand around yourself or to be so much in the spotlight. But no, it's actually not, because what you're doing essentially is bringing your entire aesthetic, yes, but especially the non-aesthetic pieces of your business into orbit.
Mhm.
Basically, you're forming this really concentrated
Yeah.
image of what it is that you do, how you go about it, why, and all of those things. But by bringing your own personality into all of that, it clarifies your tactics even further. And so it's like you figure out, yeah, like you
Yeah.
figure out
Absolutely.
what works for you on a really deep level, right? Because there are so many ways to build a business and succeed, right? I mean, in your coaching alone, I imagine
Mhm.
you've run into every which strategy and people do great, right? And
Yeah. Yeah, there's no magic way of doing it. It's what works and what you're
exactly.
going to
Yeah.
actually follow through
Yeah,
on, to be
exactly.
honest, is huge.
And,
Yeah.
with that piece that we talked about of like, if you're trying to just like hone, rein things in all the time and you're trying to keep this Frankenstein thing together as well as build a business and run your life and, do all the things that you have going on, it's just exhausting. And so the whole point is to go
Mhm.
with the grain, right? When it comes to running the business, how you feel in your personhood, right? Get that in line and then use your brand
Mhm.
to express all
Mhm.
of that. And so to get all that to work together, especially for an entrepreneur who is just trying to get off the ground. Like, let's make it as easy as possible, right? Like,
Mhm.
let's get all the horses pulling in one direction
Mhm.
and get some traction. So
That sounds so good. I love that. I'm sure that the audience is sitting there like, "Ooh, that sounds really good. I need to figure out how exactly to do that." So, talk to me a little bit about how long have you been doing this? Where is your current growth? What are you currently like?
yeah,
What are your
yeah,
struggles right now? What's happening? What's
gotcha.
working really well? What's
So
happening? Yeah.
I have been doing this for, gosh, what year is it? 2022? All these COVID years have me mixed up.
Yes.
So
Uh-huh.
I first went freelance in 2016, but didn't get into actual brand
Mhm.
work probably for a couple years after that. I had a client actually who had asked to have all of the assets that I had created for them gathered in one place and into a brand guide, and I was like, this is fun. I should do this for my clients. Like, just focus full time on this, right? Um, so I'm going to take the long
Mhm.
route and answer your question if that's cool.
Do
So,
it. Go right
interestingly
ahead.
enough, so in 2016, this is the backstory to how I got where I am, right? In 2016, I
Mhm.
was navigating a faith transition. And, from my lifelong religion, funny enough, got a hold of a book by Eckhart Tolle. And, yeah, if you're familiar,
Mhm.
he's written The Power of Now. The book that I got a hold of was A New Earth. And it introduced me essentially to meditation and um, just creating internal space, right? And just kind of detaching from,
Mhm.
the things in life that I'm just so hooked on making happen, right? And just kind of realizing that, life is okay. It happens the way it should, and all of that, right? And so, the faith transition didn't
Yep.
happen immediately. It took a little while for that to, for me to realize that, just like, gosh, this thing that I've called God my whole life is so much more than I thought. I don't know what you believe, but
Mhm.
yeah, we can have that conversation another time. But it created in me this space basically where I could just be. I could let myself just be, probably for the first time ever. And mentally, I think that
Mhm.
space allowed me to accept myself, right? And the way that I am, and to utilize these tools of personality systems and things like that to, like, understand about myself, but know that that's not who I am, right? And so identity, basically, the
Right.
things that I clung so hard to with, a lifelong religion that I just loved dearly. And then my sense of self, just with that space coming in, like, it really kind of broke down my sense of identity, and some people would call that an identity crisis. Yeah.
A little bit of one, a little shifting
Yeah,
of the
exactly. And
thoughts.
so
Yep.
what's so funny to me as a brand strategist, like, that irony is not lost on me, to where, I literally. Yep.
You're seeking
Yeah,
around your own brand
exactly. So,
potentially. Mhm.
my identity broke down, and I developed a brand identity strategy out of it, right? So it all works out, I
Mhm.
guess, is the point. Um, okay, so that all goes down, that's like 2017, 2018. Meanwhile, I'm freelancing, right, for my husband at the time's business.
Mhm.
That project hits of, my client who said, "Hey, can you gather these things?" And I'm like, this sounds amazing. Let's do this full time. And so then I peeled off and
Mhm.
created my own business, Day Studios, in 2019. And
Mhm.
immediately following that, my marriage took a nosedive. And for the following year, we were trying to piece things together. And I was in a deep, dark depression,
Mhm.
and he was in a deep, dark depression. And we were just trying to make it work. And it didn't ultimately. And then COVID hit. And so it's just like all this, all
Mhm.
these life things happened right after I started my business.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
luckily, though, I had a handful of clients who I, had done branding work for, and then they needed follow up work. Right. That's what usually happens, and that's why I have an agency on
Yeah.
the side. Right, is that I
Mhm.
can coach people, help them form strategies, and
Right.
also have the agency to offer up the design side if that's needed, and if they see it fit. Um, so there's that, right? So luckily with those clients, I stayed afloat. I actually had my best year ever last year in 2021. But now that I actually have my own methodology nailed down, I'm looking to move beyond that model,
Mhm.
which, I mean, luckily has been referral based up until now. And so as I turn
Right. Right.
to get this word out, this methodology out into the world that I believe so strongly in. Um, where I am now is that visibility piece, right? Like how do I tell the world about Day Studios and how important it is to infuse your humanity into your business and your brand. So that's where I am currently. That's a long answer.
Kind of in that. Yeah. Well, I think it happens so often for everybody, I think, but business owners particularly, where that personal side of your life has such a direct impact on what your business looks like, whether you start to question things in the business, build different things kind of out of the ashes of whatever's going on. And we don't always
No.
get that when we're in a corporate job. It's like you can just go through the motions and go to the job and do the things, even if your world is burning, in the background. You can kind of still do that. And um, I think it's very interesting to hear just that transition that you went through and the positive outcomes that came out of it, right? Through
Right.
that struggle, through that strife, coming out and getting to the other side of it and having such a strong sense of what your business is going to be now. And now just looking to get visible. So, what are you thinking? What are you currently contemplating on the visibility track, and then how can I help you nail that down or offer any
Absolutely.
advice in that
So,
area?
to apply my own methodology, right? For me, my personality
Mhm.
is basically right in the middle of introversion and extroversion, right? Um, at the end of the day,
Okay.
need to be alone to recuperate that energy. And so I am introverted, right? But I love people. I love engaging with people and all of that. So with that introversion, though, I find that there are some marketing strategies that just like flat out give me anxiety to start, right? Just like, let's try on some
Yep.
different tactics here. So, with that and with the level of, how do I say it? Just the depth of my message, right? To brand
Mhm.
your business with yourself just so perfectly integrated, um, it takes a lot of self awareness, right? And the thing that I feel like would be a disservice to my business is to just treat it like it's just another brand guide or something like that. And so I want people to be able to um, take in this content that I create and let them sit with it. And so with that, I'm thinking podcasting would be the method for that,
Mhm.
right? Whether I start my own podcast or try and be a guest on other people's podcasts, I just think that long format is such a cool way for my message to sit with people and to kind of let them kind of steep in it.
Yeah, they do. Definitely, podcasting allows for the audience to get a better, more intimate, kind of
Right.
quicker view into who you are, right? Because they are listening. There's something in the psychology of listening to someone's voice, hearing them with their messaging is different
Totally.
than
Yeah.
just reading text, right? So you don't get the same reaction to it. You don't get the same level of like emotion doesn't play into it as much as when you're listening to a conversation or you're listening to somebody talk and they're laughing or they're angry and they're ranting or they're whatever that's happening. That does create a level of trust and a level of just intimacy straight off that you
Exactly.
can't get through the written word. um, I think what happens is people can hear your tone on a podcast, and then when they read your stuff they start to hear your tone in that, because we get used to that, right? We get used to, oh, that's how she speaks, that's
Right.
the intonation she uses, all of those things happen, and then we read in your voice after we've heard what your
Exactly.
voice is, right? So I think podcasting can be super valuable. um, I do always think that podcast guesting is the best way to start. So the reason I think that is because it just broadens your exposure to other people's audiences. When you're starting your own podcast, you are really trying to build up your own podcasting audience. And you have to do a lot of promotion and a lot of putting it out in the world and sharing it everywhere and to try and kind of pull people in. Where when you're a guest on somebody's podcast, there's already people there. When you think about it, like, you're going into a room and you're going to speak, there's already an audience. You're not trying to do your speech and pull people from a hallway that catch a snippet of it and feel interested and
Right.
persuaded to listen to you. Um, it also, I think, helps you nail down exactly what your messaging is and how it is best served to an audience, right? So you're going to know, oh, or hosts keep asking me about this. This is the thing that catches their eye. This is the thing. Most of the time, those hosts are potentially your clients. So it's actually a great feedback loop for you to determine, oh, if that thing is interesting to most of the hosts, that's the thing I need to start leading with. That's the thing that I can start to do some of my other promotional visibility stuff with, that will allow them to kind of like, that's catching the eye of somebody, so pay attention and keep doing it, right? It's great
Absolutely.
market research as you go through, which is really critical. Yeah. um I think the biggest thing I've learned from podcast guesting is really succinctly being able to talk about your services from a place of problem solving for the client. So what does the solution that gets created from this? So we know the need for branding, right? And the need for authentic and just transparent
Hmm.
branding makes perfect sense, right? So the question though is, why do I invest in branding with you? Why do I take the time to do that personal growth and development work and like really insightful? We know kind of from a perspective of us, like how that value is beneficial to me as a if potential client. But the question is, what does that translate into for the client's bottom line? Because oftentimes that's the thing that's going to hook them. The hook is, I can help you grow your business. I can help you increase your sales. I can help you resonate with your audience more clearly and therefore either repel people that aren't the right fit or draw in the people that are the right fit. So you always want to come from your answers on a podcast or your like discussion on a podcast to be that. How are you solving their problem and what's in it for them? Because essentially humans are
Yep.
really big on
Exactly.
what's in it for us, right? Yeah. Yeah. It's so good. So, when you think about launching your own podcast, how does that feel to you as a strategy? How does it feel in terms of your capacity right now? Because that's a big piece of it, is do you have the space and time to put that
Right.
into your
You
current
know,
workload?
I think trying that on, just seeing what feels true, right? I think right now, I think you're totally right that the
Mhm.
the approach is to just go be a guest. get my message out there, and just see how I can help, whereas, with my own podcast, it's
Mhm.
just like you say, it's a different game entirely. And I think at a future point,
Mhm.
I would be more ready for that. Whereas right now, I just want to put all of my time and energy into spreading that word, getting it out there, get those reps in, right?
Yeah. Well, that's it, right? You just need to, tell people who you are and what you do and what you solve for them. And then the more eyeballs on that offer, the more ears that are listening to what you have to say, that will inevitably create for you more people showing up on the door asking for your help. Um, the beneficial thing, I think, also about being a podcast guest or a podcaster as well is you can use that content in so many different ways to fulfill some of those other maybe marketing strategies that you're like, nah, I don't want to do those. Podcast guesting allows you to have video clips or audio clips and quotes and all of that sort of thing that you can start to use on all of your other platforms
Right.
to support that same messaging, right? And it allows you to not have to just be writing content 24 hours because nobody wants to do that. But I think it can be a really good growth strategy for you as you're going to just expand your audience and expand your people out there that know who you are and what you've got to offer
Love
and
that.
why it's so
Thank
critical.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there any other area of your business that you feel like is hard right now or is a struggle or that just is, I don't know, a little, I always feel like it's a little rough. Like you need a little sandpaper in that area. Is there any other place that you're like, oh, okay, that spot over there needs
Goodness,
a
you know
little bit
what,
of work?
Sam? My focus is so hard on just getting out there and spreading the word that I can't think of anything that comes to mind
Mhm.
right now, but I know where to find you.
That's good.
I know where to
That's not
find
a
you.
bad problem to have. Yes, you do. I am in your ears. Yeah, no, I think there's I think it's really cool about thinking, okay, so as a podcast guest and people start showing up, then what does it look like if you have 15 people that are calling you for consults next week and then 15 people for consults the following week and the following week? What does that look like in terms of
Yeah,
your
that
growth
sounds
plan?
so good to me, actually.
Yeah.
Let's get those books filled up. Yeah, no.
You're like,
So
"Ooh." Uh-huh.
what I have going for me, luckily, is that my business has been running since, 2019. And so I have plenty of systems in place. I've, got all of the appointment booking and I have designers
Mhm.
on call and, all of that just ready, to just get some brands
Yeah.
out there because
Yeah.
my vision is that I can be kind of the brains behind the strategy and helping people through that, and
Mhm.
then whether people decide to do the aesthetic design side with me, great, or I can help find a designer elsewhere that can express the way that people want to express their brand. And so I would love to, be totally hands off on design from here on out. And so if I was booked up entirely
Mhm.
with consults and strategy calls, I would love that so much. I really think that would light up my world. So bring it on.
Yeah. You're like, "I am ready. Come on." I really like that. I think that's actually a unique piece to how you go about this. I think sometimes you get people that are in the branding world and they everybody has their particular design way of doing things and your own internal biases to what you like and what you prefer and all those sorts of things. And I think having a team of graphic designers that you can call on based on what that client is looking for or what you've uncovered throughout the consult period, I think is critical because I do think sometimes graphic designers and branding people can get into that. It's hard to be the solution, to be the creator of a brand for everybody, right? Every different kind of visual feeling you want to create. Not everybody can draw 700 different ways of creating the same vision. I think it's really cool that that's how you've built the business, so that you do have other people's graphic fingers on things. I mean, now it's probably more mouse pads, but to do that, to create that vision for people so that it's not just all on you, because I do think it's hard to come up with, 75 different ways to look at a brand
Exactly.
all by yourself.
Exactly.
I
And to
think
be
that's really
honest,
hard.
as I've
Yeah.
entered into addressing the coaching industry as a brand strategist, I find that that's the most
Mhm.
common approach. Is they're like, oh, this designer is so talented, and they are. Don't get me wrong. They're so talented. Everything they make is so just
Absolutely.
beautiful, right? Beautifully put together. But the issue is it focuses on the aesthetic alone, right? Whereas the most important piece is the
Mhm.
strategy, because trends are going to come and go. You're going to be sick of your brand in a year, probably, the way it looks, right? You've seen this. You're nodding.
Mhm. I have been that.
And it
Yep. I'm like,
happens.
uh-huh. I
Yes,
might
and it
deeply
gets
feel that right
expensive,
now.
right?
Uh-huh.
And so to avoid
Mhm.
hopefully some of that, you can just do what I call deep branding, right? And align your business, build your business around the
Yeah.
brand, and build just such a tight core that, what you end up branding is so much less subject to change than, your favorite color, or
Mhm.
for a coach, right? Exactly. Well, and
Yeah, the
maybe not
whim
even
of
a
the day.
whim, but
Mhm.
like for a coach, let's say they have like a metaphor that they use often, or part of their model,
Mhm.
let's say, one that I've seen often is a butterfly, like metamorphosis and things like that, right? So often, because coaches are how we are, right? Like, we're always thinking about better ways to
Mhm.
improve our client's experience, if they're a good one, right? If they're a good coach. And so their methodologies change a
Mhm.
lot, right? The things that they draw inspiration from
Yep.
change often. And so to build your brand around that,
Mhm.
it's tricky, right? Like, you want that to be the thing that pulls people in because it
Mhm.
means so much to you. But unfortunately, it's very subject to change. And so I try and pull people away from from doing that. And
Uh-huh.
so that's why I think
Yeah.
branding around your humanity is a little bit more realistic, because, sure, we go through identity crises and
Mhm.
things change.
Yep.
Yep,
As we may or
exactly,
may not have talked
exactly.
about earlier.
So,
Mhm.
with that,
Yep.
you can brand around things that just are going to be more predictable, right? More steady for you moving forward. And fact of the matter is, like,
Mhm.
who knows where your business is going too, right? Like, your methodologies change, your goals
Mhm.
change,
Yeah.
all of that. And so, why not brand from the beginning in a way that is, how do you say it? Just like, it's just more grounded, right? It's
Mhm. Well, and it feels like a little bit more kind of a sophisticated look at
right.
branding that has longevity, right? It's not just um in the current, wherever you are currently. It doesn't have to necessarily, because that does transition. I've seen that over the course of my coaching career, just the shifts in how I think about things, or the way I interact with clients, or the things I used to say all the time. I think that's spot on. And I think, yeah, if we can avoid doing that,
Exactly.
all the better, right? Let's not
Exactly.
have to rebrand all the time. We can
Exactly.
just
Well,
do little
and
tweaks and
like, just
updates.
knowing
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
personality, like, let's say you do need spontaneity in your life. Like, let's build that into your brand. Let's make it so that,
Mhm.
with,
Yeah.
let's say, pulling one out of the air, like, let's say you do seasons in your podcast or something like that, right? Where you're focused on a topic, and then you turn, then you
Mhm.
kind of like pull in different inspiration. You can brand that aesthetically in a way that brings in variety that you wouldn't get um, otherwise, right?
Yeah.
You can purposely have a very colorful like color palette, right? Just talking aesthetics. Um, and even from a non-aesthetic
Mhm.
perspective, there are so many ways to bring spontaneity and to build that into your business. And so I think that's really important, is just to consider, what your needs are. Some people just flat out don't need change in their business. It's like they want to set it and forget it, and they'll readdress their brand in
Mhm.
5 to 8 years, right?
Yep.
And that's great. And if you can do that
Mhm.
from the point you brand, excellent. But others might plan to rebrand
Yeah.
in 4 years, right? They'll anticipate it, and it won't come as like, oh, I'm
Mhm.
starting over in my brand. Like, no, like we were planning on this, and this is on
This
brand,
was
right?
always the
To
plan. Yeah.
to yeah,
Yeah.
yep,
This is what we do. We do a 4-year
exactly.
refresh. It's like a lease
Exactly.
of a car.
And that's
That's
just
what we
it.
do.
It's like it's such a psychological
Yeah.
game, right? Like you're not starting over. Like
Mhm.
this is something we anticipated, and it's
Mhm.
it's it's a continuation of everything I've built so far. And what's so cool about branding like in such a tight core way like that is whatever you create, right? Whatever offer you come up with, as long as you stick to that core, it's going to be on brand, even if it looks differently
Mhm.
aesthetically. And so that's why I've built my business the way that I
Yeah.
have in structuring that offer, right, of brand strategy as disconnected from aesthetic, because that's the most
Mhm.
important piece, is just learning to concentrate it and clarify it and just get that core set, right? And then whatever it is you want to do to decorate your business, great,
Yeah.
all the better. So
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's so good. Okay, Dana. So if people are listening to this and thinking like, "Ooh, my branding, that feels like she's talking directly to me." Where can they find you? How can they track you down if they want to learn a little bit more about working with you
absolutely,
and what branding looks like from
absolutely,
your
you can
business
find me on
perspective?
Instagram, and my handle is at Dana.day studios. So that's Dana.day, as in daytime, studios.
Perfect. Okay, I'll make sure to link that up in the show notes so anybody who's driving and or like me can't remember things like that when they go to park and jot it down. I will pop that in the show notes and we'll go from there. Well, Dana, this was amazing. I had such a good time having this conversation and I think it it resonates with me in terms of me thinking about my branding and thinking about some of my clients that are at that stage of considering branding differently than they have been before. So I am really grateful we were able to do this and get
Absolutely.
together
Thank
and
you
have
so
this
much. It
conversation.
really just, it's so important to me. So I just am really, really grateful for the chance to talk about it.
Yeah, no, it was great. Excellent. Thank you. All right, everybody, that wraps us up for this week. If you have any questions or want to track down Dana, then please go to our show notes. You can find them on all of the platforms. And if you have any comments or thoughts around this conversation today, I would love to see them. So leave me a rating, leave me a review, pop a question into my DMs on Instagram, and we will talk to you next week.